morning, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you to our Republican media availability today. With us on the House side are Leader Representative J.T. Wilcox from the 2nd District, Vice Caucus Chair Representative Kelly Chambers from the 25th District, and Vice Caucus Chair Representative Eric Robertson from the 31st District. And from the Senate, we have Leader Senator John Braun from the 20th District, and Whip Senator Keith Wagner from the 39th District. And with that, I will turn it over to House Republican Leader J.T. Wilcox for some remarks.
Well, thank you very much, John, and thanks to all of you for being on here. It seems like on day 30 of the 2023 session, we're back on sine die of 2022 because what we're all talking about once more is vehicular pursuit. And it seems like we're in the same position as well. It's stuck in the Senate. We've got Democratic leadership and a committee chair that is refusing to move it. We have a bill over here in the House that has 20 co-sponsors, 20 Democratic co-sponsors that could be the tool that loosens all this up. I'll let Eric talk about that a little bit more. I very much appreciate the fact that the press has been all over this. We've included 20 stories over the last week in our Capitol Buzz. And we've also seen some cases that I very much appreciate. I think you've heard me say before that one of the hardest things to do in politics is admit you were wrong. And when you have 20 Democratic co-sponsors, that tells us that a lot of Democrats are ready to do the right thing. And to enlarge on that, I'll turn it over to Eric Robertson.
Thank you, JT. You're absolutely right. We're back where we were at just a little less than a year ago, and I'm hopeful that we can gain some momentum on the issue of police pursuits. Representative Rule and I have been working on promoting House Bill 1363. Last summer and fall, we heard as my Democratic colleagues in and around the Puget Sound region in particular talked about how they supported expanding police pursuits. That did materialize somewhat with 20 co-sponsors on this important piece of legislation. However, we're not seeing that commitment from our Democratic colleagues to get this bill out of committee. It was scheduled for this Thursday to be voted out of committee. And breaking news this morning, unfortunately, there's allegedly not enough support on the Democratic side in the committee to vote that out, to send it to the floor for proper debate. And so that's after hearing all last summer and this fall about how important it was and how they were going to support it, hearing this morning that there's not enough support to even get it out of committee is really deflating. And so I'm hopeful that we can continue to work that. The Republican caucus is united. We've got, even if we took the 40 votes that we have and the 20 that were the co-sponsors, that's 60 votes in the House. So I don't see where there is an issue with moving it forward. We need to act on this now. I know there's calls to study the issue further. I think that's a great idea. We can always look at things as we go down the road. However, to fail to act on what is critical and important and a right now challenge is not in the best interests of the communities. We need to do that. The language is permissive. It puts a statewide standard around police pursuits, but communities can make their own, they can make their own decision as to whether those occur. And as I pointed out to some of my colleagues, what's good in Bellevue may not be all that bad in Buckley or Blaine. So we need to remember that we're creating statewide policy. And I really urge the chair of the House Public Safety Committee and the Senate Public Safety or Law and Justice Committee to act on this bill and keep it moving forward. And And it's not just police that are crying for the change. We've got people from all of our communities saying the crime wave's too much. We need to act. We need to do something now. We've got a whole slate of bills to address the spike in crime. However, this one's really on the forefront because when you can run from police no matter what, that just sets the message for folks. But our business community, yesterday in a meeting, the Retail Association stood up and said, this is our #1 bill because it's affecting our stores, it's affecting our customers, and it's affecting our communities where we can't do business in a safe way. So I think we need to act now. And I'm going to pass it off to my great colleague, Kelly Chambers, who's going to tell us about one of our mutual constituents who really had a terrible experience when it came to the inability to pursue criminals.
Thanks, Eric. Good morning, everyone. Kelly Chambers, State Rep from the 25th Legislative District. And I wanted to bring your attention back to a situation and why restoring vehicle pursuit is so important to our caucus and to many of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. This bill has such broad bipartisan support from the Canadian border down to Vancouver and Clark County. You might remember a situation that happened just a year ago, January 15th, a constituent in my district in the 25th, two 12-year-old girls that had a slumber party had gone up to the local elementary school and were walking home on a Sunday morning when they were hit in a hit and run by someone in a stolen vehicle that law enforcement was not able to pursue. That was all over every media outlet because everybody was looking for that stolen landscaping truck that killed little 12-year-old Immaculate Goldade and seriously injured her best friend, Kathleen Olson. This is not just about broken windows and stolen vehicles. This is about lives, and it is deadly for us not to address this vehicle pursuit issue this year, this legislative session, and this week. So with that, I just wanted to bring your attention back to it because it is so critically important. Yes, we understand that vehicle pursuits are inherently dangerous, and we want to give the tools to law enforcement to be able to make those decisions in real time where they can take all the circumstances into account based on how busy it is and the weather and traffic and who's on the road. And this is not about blowing through a school zone at 100 miles an hour in a reckless manner, but ensuring that the most dangerous elements of our society are taken care of, and that we give law enforcement the tools to do so. And to fail to act this session is deadly. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Senator Braun. Senator, you're muted.
There we go. So our colleagues in the House have done a great job of laying out this issue, and I know it's an issue almost everybody's tracking right now. I'll just add a couple what I think are key points. One, they want to talk on data. The data couldn't be more clear. We have 150% increase in folks fleeing our law enforcement officers, reported by the State Patrol. We have a 50% increase in stolen cars. This law, as it stands, based on a probable cause standard instead of a reasonable suspicion, which 49 out of 50 states use, we are the outlier, is emboldening criminals. I think Eric said it well. It is emboldening criminals to be more aggressive and therefore more dangerous to our communities and to our families. It couldn't be more clear. The other thing I'd like to point out is, we get a lot of discussion around here from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle about listening to lived experiences. We hear that about almost every social issue here, and yet they are absolutely unwilling at this point to listen to the lived experiences of law enforcement officers across our state, and I think even more importantly, to victims across our state. They have become, I would say, obtuse when it comes to listening to folks who are dealing with these very serious and dangerous issues, and it shouldn't be tolerated. What we have right now is frankly unimaginable based on comments made over the last year by our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. They're not even gonna, it's not that they're not gonna agree with us, they're not even going to allow debate on this issue on the floor of the House or the Senate. That's just unconscionable. There's no way this should be happening. And let's be clear, these are bills, both in the House and the Senate. It's 53, 52 in the Senate and 1363 in the House. These are both bills that are not identical, but virtually identical to bills that passed off the Senate floor with, I think, 32 votes and the House floor with 86 votes. These are strong bipartisan support if they come to a vote, but there's a small group in each caucus who are working feverishly to keep them from even coming for a vote. That should not be acceptable. So I don't think there's much more to say on this. I'll stop there and turn, for me at least, turn it over to my colleague over here, Keith Wegener.
Yeah, well, I do have a little bit more to say on that. I have the sometimes pleasure and sometimes discomfort to sit on the Senate Law and Justice Committee. And I want to echo what Representative Robertson said about a failure of commitment. Even though privately, some of the folks on the other side of the aisle say they want to work with us on this issue, when it comes to a vote, and I'm going to point specifically to Senator Lovick's pursuit bill 5533, which we all agree is a good bill, and we need to look into how we do pursuits in Washington. But I had an amendment which would have tied that to action, action now. And the chair would not even allow that amendment to be heard in committee. So that tells me that there's a bit of disingenuousness to this idea that they're willing to take real action this session. And I would hate for this bill, Senator Lovick's a thoughtful bill, to be used simply as a smokescreen for inaction. And I feel that's how it's being used right now. Because if we don't act, we're failing our people. I'll stop there.
All right, with that, we'll get to questions. First, I would like to go to Jerry Cornfield of the Herald.
I wanted to ask about a bill that's coming up for an executive session vote this afternoon, the middle housing in the House Housing Committee. Just wondering, it substitutes pretty extensive changes. I wonder if you, Representative Wilcox or Robertson, might know. Is this a better bill for your caucus? Are you seeing progress? Are there issues from communities that are should be cited at this point?
Well, I'll start, and Eric can fill in because he may be more familiar with details than I am. But I've said from the first day that in concept, we are supportive of the middle housing bill. And I've also said that that bill is going to have to evolve. And I have an awful lot of confidence in the House Republican housing team that includes people like Andrew Barkas that has spent a lifetime putting people in homes. And I'm not talking about putting people in mansions, but putting everyday working people into homes. He's probably got more experience in doing that than anyone else in Olympia. And I believe that in this case, the legislative process where you have hearings that elicit concerns from people all over the state is going to result in what it's supposed to, the perfection of the bill. And if Andrew's going to support this substitute, then I will. And Kelly could chime in if she wanted to, but I think we're all going to express a lot of confidence in Andrew, Mark Clicker, and the other people in that committee.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything I can add, JT, but for us in our caucus and for me personally, I know that home ownership is the American dream, and we've not done a very good job at making progress in the 4 short years that I've been here on increasing the inventory that we need so that we can give other Washingtonians that bite of the apple and that chance to own their own home, build equity, and build their American dream. So we do follow Rep. Barkas's lead on that because he is an expert in the issue.
Did you have a follow-up, Jerry?
Sure. Different subject, just trying to hit on some of the other topics. An issue last session that didn't make it to the finish line, controversial, was the staffing ratios in hospitals. There is that bill also moving forward with an executive session scheduled. I don't know if it's in the Senate right now. I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts, analysis of where it stands and where it might end up.
I think that bill is gonna end up going to Ways and Means. It's unclear to me if there are votes to move it out of Ways and Means. That's a discussion that's still evolving. But I will tell you unequivocally that that is the wrong bill to solve what is a very real problem. We have a significant nurse shortage in our state. We need to be doing things like thinking about how we license nurses, about compacts, about how we add to our existing ability to train nurses. We need to think about how we can replace some of the work they do with other folks who can fill in, LPNs and nurse assistants. These are things we can do to actually make a difference. Simply setting a staffing ratio, I think there's broad and growing understanding that that is not solving the issue. That's simply a power play by the nurses union that's not going to solve the problem, not going to fix the working conditions for nurses, not going to make the healthcare better in our state. So we're focused on what I think are better solutions that involve how we get more nurses in our state and how we get nurses more help in their jobs. Well, but bottom line, we'll see how that works out in Ways and Means.
I would add on that, thank you, Senator Braun, but really we are just dealing with issue after issue here around workforce and workforce development. What you've seen over the last 2 years with COVID is a lot of people retire. So we have this unusual circumstance where we have low unemployment rate, and yet businesses are not able to grow and they are not able to fill the positions that they have. So particularly in the healthcare field, I've spent the last 19 years working in long-term care. I have a bill being heard tomorrow. I think it's 1568, but it's regarding long-term care workers. So when hospitals don't have beds to discharge patients to, because we don't have enough caregivers at CNAs and HCAs and adult family homes and in nursing homes, then those patients end up sitting in the hospital and taking up valuable beds that could be better assigned to patients that need that care. So it's the nursing bill and the staffing ratios isn't just about RNs. It's about the whole spectrum. And if we had enough nurses to go around and fill those positions, we wouldn't be experiencing some of the issues that we're having right now, where a hospital's definition of being at capacity means they're at staffing capacity, not physical bed capacity. There are empty beds sitting because we don't have the staff to cover those positions. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on training up and bringing new licensed professionals into the industry as, LPNs and RNs. But at the same time, I would say in the last 2 years, we've had a lot of solutions looking at high school students that they're going to, solve all the problems and be the next segment of the workforce that we need. But also the bill that I'm running tomorrow with long-term care workers is directing the agency to reach back out to some of those whose licenses have expired, invite them to come back into the workforce, because we need those workers, even if they're part-time, to come and help fill some of those positions so that we can move patients through the system and address some of the staffing needs.
All right, and next we'll go to Claire Withicum of the Seattle Times.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the time. I missed the very beginning, so this might have been asked about, but I was curious about your caucus's kind of perspectives on House Bill 1474, which sets up the Covenant home ownership account to help with down payment and closing cost assistance to historically marginalized groups. Curious about kind of your perspectives on that proposal.
Well, I'll have to say that's not a bill that's really gotten a lot of attention yet. So I guess I'll have to check in with my housing people and get back to you.
Yeah, I would say this. I think the companion in the Senate is 5496, and on the face of it, it seems to add an additional $100 to the recording fee. So we're starting off this discussion about providing more housing to folks who have been disadvantaged in the past by making it more expensive for everyone. That seems like the wrong direction. So I'm sure the bill is offered in good faith and it's trying to solve a real problem, but I think the policy solution is right off the bat in the wrong direction.
Did you have a follow-up, Claire?
Yeah, on a different subject, if that's okay. I wanted to step back a little bit and kind of get, now that we're about a month into session, your all's perspectives on kind of how things are going more broadly and your caucus's involvement in the development of policy. How do you feel like your priorities are progressing at this point?
Well, we're 30 days in, and it's been a pretty smooth 30 days, but I think we're beginning to get into the part of the session where things get a little more complicated. Going back to the public safety bills and the pursuit bill, it's so plain that those bills, if they were able to come to the floor, would get a robust debate and then probably 86 votes out of the House again. And I think it's corrosive to our institution to take a bill that is so widely supported and never even put it into a position where it can be debated. You can't debate a bill until it comes up for a vote. And they're not even at this point going to allow that to happen in committee. And, a committee debate is pretty limited. I would just ask, for the sake of our institution and as a way of moving forward in, getting back to the way government is supposed to work for people, don't continue to cling to this idea that you can only bring a bill to the floor that will pass based on votes from the majority party, the Democrats. Bring bills that can get 60 or 70 or 80 votes, even if you have to have some Republicans to do it, and maybe even fail a few votes so that you can have a robust debate and allow your caucus to listen to the debate and make up their mind and maybe change their mind once in a while based on good points that are brought up in a robust interactive debate. And I'd really like to ask the majority to give that a chance. That's the way government used to work, and it can work that way again.
Yeah, I just add that I think, individually, it's been pretty congenial the first 30 days. We've been getting along pretty well, and I think everybody is genuinely happy to be back in person, and that certainly helped. But along the lines of what Representative Wilcox said, we continue to have this very apparent effort to limit debate on very important topics. We see important bills. Earlier I asked about the middle housing bill, and if we all seem stumped, it's because even though that's a bipartisan bill, we're not being included in the negotiations in any meaningful way. The same thing is true on the citing bill. You can go down the list of controversial or challenging, I should say, many cases bipartisan bills that the majority is uninterested in listening to Republican input, either publicly or in negotiations. So that's the frustration, and it's going to grow if that's the path that continues.
All right, next we'll go to Joe O'Sullivan of Crosscut.
I've got some questions on this whole legislative privilege thing. I'm still trying to figure out how exactly it works. Now, my understanding is in the state Supreme Court in 2019 ruled that lawmakers were subject to the Public Records Act. The decision was based on the basis that each individual lawmaker office is its own agency. So yes or no question, Representative Wilcox, Senator Braun, has the Washington State Constitution imbued you with a special right that allows you to walk into another lawmaker's office and redact their records? Yes or no?
If I understand that question correctly, I don't see why me walking into John's office gives me the right to redact his stuff.
I'm not even sure who's making that point. Nobody's claiming any right to redact anybody else's records.
You're incorrect, Senator Braun, because Senate Majority Leader Andy Billig told me yesterday he sat down with a Microsoft Teams chat of Senate Democratic lawmakers, and he said, I'm the guy who was exerting executive legislative privilege on that. And I was sitting down and going through redacting other records. You guys have never done that?
No.
No.
And now tell me, because you guys have seen the written policies and guidelines and the parameters around when legislative privilege is used. Explain for us, from what you've seen written down on this, how this is being used.
Well, in our caucus, it's been used very, I can't say zero now, very limited. And in the few cases that has been used, I think even those records have now been released. But the understanding, as supported by court cases in our state and around the country, based on both the state and the federal constitution, is there is some limited right to legislative privilege for deliberation. So as an example, one example that's been provided to me is if an individual legislator is thinking through how he or she might offer a particular bill, as you work through, what are the pros and cons, what's the best policy, that may be, if that legislator chooses, maybe you may be able to use that for legislative privilege. It is not, as has been used by our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, to redact items that were personally embarrassing. That is not the point of legislative privilege. It's very limited, and it's very well established in jurisprudence. And I think I know JT can speak for himself, but we've said we're not going to use it. I think in every case except the one legislator who is no longer with us to make the decision, it's been released. So I think we're playing this pretty clear. We're defending our institution, which I think is our job, but we're also working in good faith to share and be just as transparent as we can possibly be with the public. I don't think that's true on the other side of the aisle.
Yeah, so let's talk about the other side of the aisle, because we've got several Democratic lawmakers saying they never exerted legislative privilege, and then their records were shielded. You've got a Senate Majority Leader saying he's going into other offices, redacting other people's stuff. I've certainly seen, metaphorically, going to other, maybe he walked into them. I don't know that for sure. I've seen some of these Microsoft Team chats that have been redacted. They don't seem to appear to have legislative, options on a consideration or something. Has the Senate commissioned or started looking into doing an independent investigation on how this practice is being employed over there?
I think you'd find us happy to do that. We are not the ones that get to make that decision, sadly.
And Representative Wilcox, when you sit down at a table in the room with the House Executive Rules Committee, has there been any discussion over there about an independent investigation over the House side, just to make sure legislators are doing this legally and properly?
Absolutely not. And you're making the point that I've made over and over, Joe, and that is that when we have single party government, they never really hold each other accountable. And I know that that you're talking to the people that will talk about this, but aren't the ones that are doing it for the most part. And it may be because we don't have the perspective of trying to explain to you why we're keeping good bills off the floor. That's what a whole bunch of this is about.
All right. And final question, back to Senator Braun. The Washington State Senate won't release to me a list of legislative lawmakers who have lifted their legislative privilege. So the Washington State Senate on Friday released to me a batch of 1,000 records. It includes hundreds of documents that have been redacted. And what the Senate told me was that, okay, everybody's waived their privilege, so we've got the redacted documents and the unredacted documents, but they won't tell me who actually waived their privileges. The records batch is all mixed up. It's not like the House. In the House, for example, I got an individual file with each lawmaker when we asked, give us the responsive documents that were cited in whole or in part to legislative privilege. That's how we know that you can look at one lawmaker. Okay, they must have exerted it. Here were the other lawmakers on the thread. They would have the individual right to waive or not waive. And then you could assess those things. We can't assess that in the Senate because everything came back mixed up in one batch of records. And the Senate's not telling us who's lifted their privilege. Is that lawful? Is that ethical? What's going on over there?
Well, this is the first I've heard of it, so I'm not sure I'm in a position to comment. I mean, if whether it's lawful or not, I can't tell you. Whether it's and the best way to do it seems seems haphazard and unorganized, but I can't answer for why it was done beyond that. I think that's a good question. I'd be happy to follow up and get you a more, informed answer, but on the face of what you described, that seems like a bad practice.
All right, appreciate your questions.
Hey, Joe, I want to go back to one of your first questions about
Sure.
whether or not other lawmakers are redacting. So you and I have emailed on this subject a little bit. My emails that were very extensively redacted were not redacted by me. So clearly that's happening somewhere else in the system.
Sure.
And I believe that occurred because it was part of a chain of emails that you got out of the House, but I certainly did not do any redacting or ask for it. So I think your question is really fair. How is that happening? Is someone else doing it? And it looks like it, yes, but I'm not sure how and where.
All right, appreciate your time.
All right, next we will go to Shauna Sowersby of McClatchy.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for your party. I was wondering if there is any support on your all's end for the fertility services bill that would mandate insurance companies to cover fertility services.
Shauna, you got me. I am not familiar with that bill, so I can't really answer the question.
Yeah, and we generally caucus on bills when they hit the green sheet. So I wouldn't know that either.
You have a bill number?
1151 is the House bill, and then Senate Bill 5204 is the other one.
And did you have a follow-up, Shauna?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll
Next,
just point out that hasn't even made it out of committee yet, so the full debate hasn't occurred.
anyone else on that topic? Okay, next we will go to Drew Mickelson of King 5 TV.
Good morning. Thank you all. Yesterday, we heard 4 different bills dealing with Blake fixes, everything from legalization to Senator Padden's bill calling for felony charges. Where do you expect to end up on those? What are your caucuses thinking? Do you all back Senator Padden's bill? I know a number of Republicans have signed on to that one as well.
I would certainly think Senator Padden's proposal is a good one, and I would support it if it came to the floor. I think it's unlikely to come to the floor. I think as you look at this, there's a range of options. That option by Senator Padden and the kind of the counter one, I think by Senator Dinger that decriminalizes drugs probably don't. My guess, and Senator Wagner can talk to this, he's on committee, but my guess is they don't come out of committee. And the real discussion is around the 2 bills closer to the middle by Senator Robinson and Senator Solomon. I am signed on to the Senator Solomon bill. I think they're both fairly similar to the first bill we passed out of the Senate in 2021 that made a gross misdemeanor for this offense, but allowed better options to get people and keep people in treatment, to get them off hard drugs and get them back into a civil and life. I think that Solomon's bill does a better job of kind of ratcheting it up as you go to increase the leverage to get people and keep people in treatment. And I think broadly, there's a lot of agreement on that's our goal. Our goal is not to imprison folks. Our goal is to use the law enforcement system, because they're going to be involved no matter what, as leverage to get people in treatment, to provide the treatment. So I think. And the last thing I'd say is this is a model, so we just had a big discussion earlier in this talk about pursuit and all the things that the majority is doing wrong when it comes to debating and discussing and finding a solution to the pursuit issue. I think this is the right way to do it, where we have multiple options. We're hearing them all. We're thinking through it. It appears at this point that one of these will make its way to the floor in a fashion that can be debated and amended after that debate as the body sees fit. That seems like the right way to govern, and I applaud it. I just wish the same approach was being taken on the pursuit issue.
Yeah, so I agree with Senator Braun that probably Senator Patton's bill and Senator Dinger's bill are kind of at the far ends of what's going to be acceptable. And what I think will happen is we will get a blending and hopefully of the best ideas of Senator Robinson and Senator Solomon's bills. There are things to like about both of those bills. There are things I don't like about both of those bills. We heard a ton of testimony from local government and law enforcement and healthcare professionals. Each of them has some diversion elements in it that I think are really positive. There's some debate about, where you divert in the legal system, and some of those things need to be sorted out. But it is a good model. We're hearing all the possibilities. We heard all the testimony from both ends of the debate. And I think we're going to come up with something that can probably be supported going forward. I think it'll probably be in one vehicle, probably just one bill will get out, maybe two to work on. But I think if we can make it a hybrid of the best ideas in each of those bills, we will provide at least some relief. And, at the end of the day, it's not going to be what everybody likes. I would prefer Senator Patton's bill, but I'm realistic too. We have to make compromises, and that's what the process is all about.
And maybe Eric could share the House perspective.
Oh, thank you, JT. Yeah, as in the Senate, we have several opportunities over in the House to look at different approaches to the Blake fix, if you will. And those are being heavily debated. There are a myriad of different options in the Public Safety Committee, and I'm pretty confident that we'll meet in the middle somewhere there. Of course, I think we need to go back to a prior law, in my opinion, which I believe is essentially the Patton bill, and there's a House version of that as well. But yeah, we'll work through it, and that's what this process is. Work through it in committee, get it to the floor, debate it, amend it if necessary, and get to a best possible solution for statewide policy. I just wish we were doing that on the pursuit bill as well. There's a lot of options out there, and I think we can meet somewhere that the entire state could benefit from it. But we just need the political will on a lot of these different important measures.
Did you have a follow-up, Drew?
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Last question comes from Laurel Demkovich of the Spokesman Review. Her question is, I'm curious about the leader's thoughts on Senate Bill 5447 and House Bill 1505, the bill that would provide some tax incentives for producers and buyers of sustainable alternative aviation fuels. I see it has some Republican support in both the House and Senate.
Yeah, I think that aviation is a critical component of our economy here. And I know that the private sector is in favor of this bill. I'm interested in what happens to it as it goes through committee. But I think in general terms, I would feel very supportive, and like is true for a lot of other bills, we haven't caucused on it. So I can't say if every member of my caucus is on the same page as I am, but I think that we are disposed to be positive.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this bill. I think that it's one that has been worked, I think, thoughtfully prior to the session. It's got a lot of support from a wide range of business and environmental organizations, and it's an opportunity to put Washington State in the lead in a place where it's going to be very competitive to build this type of fuel. I mean, I think the reality is we don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but we can set the regulatory framework to do it and get investment early in our state. That's a good thing for our state. And I think if it's done well, it'll be a good thing for the environment.
Yeah, I sit on the aviation caucus, so we had a pretty good briefing on the bill and its potential. And it's really at a starting point. As Senator Braun said, we don't really know how we're going to do it, but we won't know how unless we invest a little bit of time and some money, frankly, to figure out how to do it and incentivize our local businesses to work on this problem. And if we get there sometime in the future, it's going to be a great thing. If we can't, it won't be for a lack of trying. So I'm supporting the bills as well.
All right, in closing, I'd just like to turn it over to the leaders for some closing remarks. Representative Wilcox.
Thanks for being here. Over to you, John.
Yeah, I'll just remind folks, our top priorities are public safety, which we spent a lot of time talking about today. And this is really the top issue in week 5, I think, and probably in week 6 till we get to cutoff and we resolve this issue, particularly at Pursuit. We're focused on affordability. And I think by far the best options there are in housing, a lot of work done in housing on both sides of the aisle in a bipartisan way that's got option, has, real potential. Although I am very concerned about some of the bills out there that could undo all that with additional regulation. And then one thing we didn't talk about at all today, but I'll put a plug in, is education. We are working, we're continue to plug away and coming up with ways to address the learning loss our children have seen over the last few years, including there's a work session today in the Senate K-12 committee about some innovative ways we can get after tutoring and helping students catch up with the stuff they didn't get over the last couple of years. So more to come on that. Thanks for coming. Have a good day.
Thank you.